Welcome, everybody, to the HCS Bracket Show. We are back. It's been a minute, but we're still doing good. It's your boy Waveburn. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Stevie Screen Alliance and Aubrey Wright. How y'all doing?
Oh, you don't have a name tag. You took yours
I
off?
still don't have a name tag. I don't need one, man.
Yeah,
y'all are the
He has
stars.
refused to use his.
Everyone already knows who Waveburn is, so that's how
Exactly. I don't gotta tell them who I am. You know what I mean? But
That's right.
Y'all are the ones that gotta do stuff. With my
Who the fuck is this
Halo
guy?
cloud.
Right.
Well, welcome
Right, so-
to the HCS Bracket Show. We got a lot to talk about. We're in it's not the off season, but it feels like the off season of Halo. We're in the in-between of a few events. We're going to talk about HCS Valencia that went down in the EU. We're going to talk about some of these roster changes that have been going on. We're going to touch on some of the HCS partnership stuff. But yeah, there's not a lot happening in NA, but there's still a lot to talk about. And let's just go ahead and let's start with Valencia. Devious, you want to give us a breakdown of that event?
Yeah, so I think even though for NA we do have this gap, that doesn't mean there's not Halo being played. There's a lot of events going on. We just had this great, honestly, really great HCS Valencia event. I had the privilege of working yet again for that event to clip gameplay. And I was actually really surprised. I think I learned a lot about new players who are really upcoming and just the teams in general that I really underappreciated from before. And even though you could visually tell that the EU kind of
Oh, did we lose them?
landscape of
I
you
think
still got
his-
my audio at least?
Oh, you cut out for a bit.
Hiccuped.
Yeah, you still hear me though?
Yeah, we got
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's cross some fingers. You might want to do the try screen again.
Yeah.
I think for the most part though, this is so funny. This came out of nowhere, just my internet, just whatever. For the most part though, it was very enjoyable. You could tell it was a notch below NA level play, but even when it came to championship, you still felt that intensity, just that great Halo gameplay. They just love watching it, and I know that everyone who watched it had a great time watching it. I think though, just looking at the event from a whole, I know I gave you some clips, Arham, to play over this, but I did want to talk about two players I didn't give clips for, real quick. And one is from Blackhand, who really made a splash on Friday, I feel. I thought Glory, from what I understand, it was his debut event, or he's just a very new player. He had some really nice plays against, I believe it was Jay Lings. And I just wanted to give another shout out to Looney on Vexed. I thought he was making some really great plays in Catalyst, some really just nail-biting, last-minute decision type of plays that, really, you could tell, he ascends to another level. So I want to give two players a quick shout out, but really we want to talk about the big four, which is really, it's kind of similar to NA. We have a big juggernaut, 4 to 5 teams. And in this case, we have J-Lings, Na'Vi, Quadrant, and of course the champions Ascend. So first, we want to talk about J-Lings first. I think overall, J-Lings, they played better than I expected. I thought coming into this that Online Warriors would at least nab that top 4 spot. But J-Lings, they really honestly outperformed. They even beat Online Warriors in that play matchup, which was the first surprise to me, honestly, for this event. I thought for Online Warriors roster that they would really get at least top 4. But J-Lings proved me wrong. I think players like Quad especially, he was making some really awesome plays, especially there's this clip on Bazaar. He got this last-minute triple to save a flag cap. Really dope stuff. And, even though they didn't really push past top 3, it was kind of a ceiling at a point. I think they both all played collectively really well and definitely exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Yeah, so I think all in all, J-Lings, I was pretty impressed by them. And I'm looking forward to what they can do at Orlando, because they qualified, the top 4 qualified for this event to the next big international event. So, yeah, here's the triple that Quad got. Really sick stuff. It was a really nice crowd moment, which, again, that's one thing we missed, having that actual live crowd to actually listen to that reaction. So it's really nice stuff by them. Next team I want to talk about is Na'Vi. So Na'Vi got 3rd place. And honestly, I thought even though they got 3rd, they played the best I've seen them play so far in Infinite. And, it's kind of tough because most of these players back in Halo 5 used to be the best team. So we know we have it in them to win that event. And honestly, I thought coming into this event that there's a chance that they could win. They looked super good before the event. Sentinels just won the last NA event. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe if Sentinels can all of a sudden just string it together, maybe this old Navi roster can do it too. One player who I was super impressed by, I just want to appreciate this clip real first though, Jimbo's overkill. Such a good clip. He hit every single shot right here. I just want to appreciate. Yep. Triple overkill. And yeah, that's it. And honestly, like Jimbo also went to talk about this more too. He really felt that his confidence is coming back and you could really see it in his gameplay. Even though they lost, I believe they lost map 5 against a quadrant before getting eliminated. Jimbo was still playing really well throughout the entire series. So I could tell him individually, he was playing really well. But the player I want to talk about is this player right here, Mighties. He was playing absolutely phenomenal for this being his first LAN event ever. They picked up this guy in place of Respectful, and he played he made some mistakes here and there, but for the most part, he did his job. He was that mainstay who was that aggressive player, that kind of Frosty-esque player, like kind of like Legend, like honestly, like right there with Legend. And he was making such pivotal plays. He was out shooting a lot of players who've been playing on LAN for such a long time. For this being his first event, I think he played the best on this team. And honestly, if I were to choose a deviant of the week, it would be this guy. I think it's really commendable what he did. You see right there, Jimbo just putting his arms up. He nearly game his whole finish there. But yeah, Mighties, I was super impressed with this guy, and I'm really looking forward to what he could do. Love his energy too. He had a great interview. So yeah, I think all in all, Navi, they played still, I think, disappointing at the end of the day because we do know they are champions, but I do think they are better than they've ever been. And honestly, that move with Respectful coming off the roster helped them in the end, even though most would think they wouldn't. So moving on, we got Quadrant. Quadrant, which definitely one of my favorite teams at this point, even across all of HCS. They did have a few team changes. They got rid of Fragger and they brought in Nurix. I believe they also brought in Shat at some point too. A few team shifts. And I think overall they played really well this event. They played really solid. They literally went to last map against Ascend in the finals, which I'll get to that in a bit. But it makes me wonder, like, how strong is Quadrant and how strong is Ascend right now? And I think from what I saw from gameplay-wise, Quadrant played very well. I think they played a little bit better at the last international event at, Kansas City. I think they played a little bit better there from what I saw. But I still think they've made it really competitive. SLG and Chick were playing really well, as always. And again, I'm just really impressed at the end of the day. I think EU Halo is getting really, really good. We saw glimpses at the beginning of Halo 5 with the Epsilon roster that eventually went to Team Infused. And we're seeing it here right now, guys. Like, this is really cool. And Quadrant, I'm a big fan of those guys. I know the coach was getting really hyped after they got some matches won on main stage. So it's great to see that. And they could have easily reset the bracket. They could have easily, honestly, won the event. It was that close. Ascend and Quadrant, they both got top 8 at Kansas City. You could call them on par with each other, to be honest. Ascend just has that extra clutch factor, and they do deserve that title of being the best EU team. So segueing to the final team, which was Ascend, who won the event. These guys, they played, to expectation. They won the event. They were making plays. Legend, Clutch said this on on the stream. He said that Legend is the best player in EU Halo, and I have to agree. I think Legend is one of the best new talents we've had in general coming into this year of Halo Infinite. Great aggressive player. He plays like a really just in-your-face type of style, and he just hits his shots. He's super accurate. He's really clutch. He makes those clutch plays. And he gets hyped too, which is just a really fun, just like character to get behind. So I think all in all, also Snipe Drone's super underappreciated. He is such a vital part to this team. And for him being like the veteran that he is, because he's been playing Halo on LAN for a while, he is honestly, I think, elevated to a level I have not seen him play. Sika is always a pleasure, always a character. He was another vital part of this team. And you got to talk about Respectful. Respectful just came onto this roster. I think he got dropped from Navi originally, and they ended up picking him up from a different roster. So for him to kind of have his little journey to where he was, super impressive, because you see Respect getting back to that position where he was before. He was once a champion, and now he is again. And he's proving to everyone that he still has what it takes to be at the top, even with that abysmal placing that they had at Kansas City. So the main question I'm wondering coming away from this event, though, is this Ascend better than the last Ascend? Because even though they won the event, it was really close. And you have to wonder, like, is that because Quadrant is that good, or is it because Ascend maybe isn't as good as they want to be? Because they could have easily had bracket reset against them. And I know, oddly, you probably have some opinions about that too.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start with J-Lings instead of Ascend. I watched a few of their series from Valencia, and they're still not where they need to be as a team. Their communication is actually really impressive, and they're still really good off the break in almost every game type they play. They still just can't string it together enough over the course of a game to really put together wins against the three that are better than them. But them beating Online Warriors was huge for them because Online Warriors, of course, picked up Shady after Respectful went to Ascend, and Shady was just kind of floating around there like, okay, we're going to add Shady in place of him because how could that not replace well? Because Online Warriors, the thing that made them like burst out into such a good start was they had Mose and Respectful reunited, which I'm pretty sure those two were on Infused together in the past. I know they were on a dominant EU roster together in the long ago, in those Halo 5 years. So Mose and Respectful as a duo were really good together, and then Respectful going off to be like, I'm taking my talents to South Beach, sorry, and winning with Ascend is not a bad choice for him. On the subject of Na'Vi still look exactly the same as they have since the start of Halo Infinite. Their teamwork is still just not where it's supposed to be. They don't know how to control space on a map. The only map they're really consistently good on is Streets because their power weapon control is the main thing that gets them victories. They're okay on live fire because of that, but then you get maps like Catalyst or Aquarius where there's not really power weapons to control, and you just don't see Na'Vi finding success on those maps. Even Streets, like there's the shock rifle and the sword, but those aren't weapons that can reliably change the pace of a map like the power weapon control in Streets or live fire can. So it's just not the same for them. It doesn't turn into this snowball victory that they're able to take control of just based off their control of power weapons. And they consistently just underperform on all of these other maps. And when they win a series, it's usually because that series had more Streets, or they did it right on Catalyst, I'll say. But I think that's more that the French teams are not good at Catalyst at all because the map is so big. I think Quadrant and Ascend both struggled on Catalyst throughout this tournament. And it's something I said when I first saw Catalyst. I was like, this is a map that's going to really favor teams that are better at classic Halo than it is like Halo 5, Halo Infinite, that fast Halo pace that they're used to now. Because Catalyst is very much about controlling a lot of space rather than controlling space quickly. So teams like KCP and Ascend are going to continue to struggle on that game type. And Ascend, I think swapping out Shady for Respectful, it's great for their morale as a team because apparently Shady was super toxic. That was what they announced when they dropped him. Like even after a win, they're like, yeah, we just won a tournament, but Shady's off the team because we can't stand him anymore. And
interesting.
So like replacing him with Respectful was an interesting choice to me. Like Respectful is super talented, but when it comes to play style, that's like replacing Spartan with Stellar. You've got a player that's just super hyper, in your face aggressive, who's going to pull off those power weapon kills when he has power weapons, and even if he doesn't have power weapons, he's going to be pushing and just destroying you with his gun. To a person who's probably just going to be looking for a flank and shooting you in the back. And I think that plays well off of like Legend and Six aggression, so it's not like a bad swap at all. And it helps Ascend kind of make up for their lack of weak side play in general, because that was one thing I criticized both them and KCP on a lot, is they just don't know what a weak side of the map is. Respectful can handle a weak side of the map. but I think they're going to take a lot of readjusting to be able to get to the point that they were as good as they were before. Like, sure, they just won a tournament. They didn't look as dominant as Ascend has in prior to this.
I guess. Go ahead.
One more note. This was not Mighty's first LAN ever. He competed at Kansas City. He did not make it out of the open bracket.
First LAN where he made it out of open.
Well, he wasn't even in open in this one. He was on Navi. He got picked up by a better team. He was part of Rejected at Kansas City. He teamed with Glory, Simply Gambit, and Mista there.
Who was my cam cut out for a second? Who are we talking about?
Mighty's was with Rejected
Mighty's.
On Glory, Simply Gambit, and Mista at Kansas City.
Okay. Kansas. What did they place? So do you know?
33-40. They did not make it out of open.
Okay. Well, oh man. Well, I thought Mighty's played a lot better this time around.
He got called up from the farm leagues and performed okay. I was not impressed by Mighty's at all. Like every time I watched him, I felt like he was making just bad decisions, bad plays. There were a lot of games where he just wasn't. There were a lot of games that I watched where he just wasn't contributing like anything, and it was kind of frustrating to watch. But that's how I feel watching 90% of European Halo.
You have a way better eye for seeing the right decisions, and I would agree he probably wasn't making the right decisions, but he's also brand new. I think they can definitely mold him into a better player. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm crossing for the future that Mighty's can improve from here on out. But I thought just as raw, like just gun skill, I was very impressed by, and just playmaking abilities. Yeah, I think that about wraps up Valencia, right?
Yeah. But, speaking of the future, one thing I just kind of want to touch on before we totally move on from this subject, we're going to have another major. We also have Worlds to look forward to. How do you see teams like Ascend? Let's just focus on Ascend and Quadrant, the top two. Like, how do you see these teams competing against the NA teams? Like, will we see a team, like Old Ascend, reach that? What were they, top 6 last time, or were they just top 8? Top 8. Like, will they break that again, or like will we see?
I don't even know, like,
top 8 again.
I think they should be at least 7/8, because the thing I was gonna kind of go over, it's kind of hard to even like judge like what are the current top 7/8 teams in NA right now, because to be honest, like no one really knows.
Right.
The top teams are kind of competing in these pro events, which we'll get to. A lot of like unconfirmed team changes, so we don't know where they're gonna lie. I'm assuming all the top echelon, the top 4 to 5 teams that we've always known, they're gonna stay there no matter what. It's really if Quadrant and Ascend could cut into that top 6 spot, and I think their previous rosters definitely could. It's dependent on what bracket they got and just how they're playing on the day. Ascend was so close to getting top 6 last time, and they could have definitely got that. Quadrant could have been in that same position too of how they've been playing. So I mean, I think right now, like honestly, I haven't been. It's just hard to judge. You can't judge like the current NA scene right now. You can make some guesses and wishful thinking, but I would still be confident that at least they would be bare minimum 9th through 12th. But I'm confident at least 7th, 8th still. I think they're still very solid. What do you think, Audley?
Audley, your thoughts?
I think Ascend, for the moment, have kind of shot themselves in the foot skill level wise. I think Shady is an incredible player. Like his hyper aggression definitely played to their team's strengths. I think if they learn to play around Respectful's vastly different play style, they can be a better team than they were with Shady. I think they'll be more balanced in that regard. I think Quadrant could make one team change and instantly be the best team in Europe, and that's to replace Nurix with Shady and put Nurix back in coaching. Because I think for the moment they like swapped out Fragger and Nurix. Actually, no, Fragger is not even on the team anymore at all. But Nurix was their coach, for Kansas City, and then they dropped Fragger and put Nurix back in as a player because he was a player before he was a coach. And then they're like, you know what? Go ahead and pick the sticks back up. Get back in there.
Right.
And they still got second at this most recent LAN. But, imagine if you have Shady in that position. It's
Mhm.
still a French player, so you're still speaking your native tongue. It's not like Ascend where you have 2 French and 2 English having to speak English. And Shady's aggression on that team with SLG and Chick behind him, come on. You can't say no
There
to
you go.
that.
Golden trio.
I
did see a
think
tweet.
that would be the best. That would be the best roster for Quadrant, and I think the best to come out of Europe basically ever. If you
I
put
love the colors too,
Chick,
that neon green.
Chick and SLG with Legend and Shady together, now that maybe we're talking about a super squad at that point.
Super squad, right?
Oh.
That
Well,
yeah. I was gonna say Shady put out a tweet saying that he's looking to potentially, if any NA rosters are interested in him picking him up, he's all game for that. I don't know how he would move and handle all that, but it is a possibility in the mix. And who knows, with all these crazy team changes, like what we're about to get into, you could see something like crazy like that happening. And in fact, I do believe that Barcode might end up in NA. I don't know if that's still going to be a thing or not, but
I'm pretty sure it is at this point. Like I know there is some sort of like memes about it when G2 first announced that Ogre One was their new GM, but I think that's actually happening. I think G2 Barcode isn't a meme. I think it's actually happening.
well, we'll see, man.
Well, let's move on and let's talk about some of the RosterMania things going on in NA and everything. This whole big new wave of roster changes. So I think just to set the scene, like all this really started when Renegade announced he was leaving Cloud9. There was this whole ordeal about where he was going to end up. But that really started this whole wave of team changes. And I think it's fair. Let's just start with Cloud9 and talk about Bound. Joining this roster, they've competed in a few of the online events with Bound on the roster. They have lost to Optic in these events, but what are y'all's thoughts about Bound, C9 Bound, and how he fits with Eco and Penguin and Stellar?
I'll let Audley start this
Yeah,
one.
we'll give that to you, Audley, since C9.
Well, back when you and I our first episode and it was just us two, Wave, you asked me if I could make any team change for Cloud9, what would I do? I would be like, I said I would replace Renegade with basically any other Slayer, and it's still the exact same Cloud9 roster. I said if you put Lucid on that roster, they never lose again. But Bound is basically a point-for-point replacement for Renegade. He makes the same mistakes. He's got a similar high level of skill. He's going to make those ego challenges. He's going to make those insane mechanical plays on the south of a dime or whatever. And online, you're not going to see those things because Latency and Optic are all in Texas together on that Optic fiber. So, of course, Optic are going to squeak some online wins and get their fans' hopes up. And then Cloud9 is going to get on LAN, and you're going to see the actual eco, and they're just going to slap Optic again. It's not going to be any different in that regard. I think Bound
happy for Bound in this situation. I'm so happy. Like, I always liked him in FaZe. I know FaZe had its problems, but I think for him having his debut season, I just like the way he played, and to have this opportunity to be in Cloud9 and to have those players surround him, it's a big honor for him. And I think, like Audley said, it's a very replaceable position, and Bound is stepping up to the plate. I didn't mean to cut you off, Audley. I don't know if you had any closing thoughts on that, but I was just again.
Cool. So, yeah, that's the new C9 roster. It hasn't officially been announced, but they've been playing together. So with Bound to C9, that leaves a hole on FaZe. Let's talk about what's been going on with FaZe and some of these projected team changes. I'll give this to you, Devious. You want to talk about what's been happening with FaZe or what the rumor FaZe roster is?
Yeah, can you actually pull up the banner for FaZe real quick?
Yeah,
just to visually for me to see. Okay, so FaZe started as a team that seemed really like no one really knows where this team is going at all. Like it's kind of just hanging out. People are leaving and it's just not seeming good at all. And then Renegade gets this idea to try to join Sentinels. That was like the whole dramatic thing that happened. Word by someone, I don't know how they got this information, but Renegade's buyout was apparently like $400,000, and just Cloud9 wasn't gonna do that. They just weren't gonna, or Sentinels wasn't gonna do that. They weren't gonna.
One note
Yeah,
on
you can
that
talk.
real quick. He said
Yeah.
it was at least 400,000. The number
At
I've heard
least,
is significantly
which is
higher
crazy.
than that.
Like,
Wow.
what the hell is that? Like, let's just say that, right? Even though it's Renegade, like that is crazy. Like, what?
That
Makes me
is
think how much they're
They
being paid.
basically said, no, you're not going to that team.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which, this sucks for Renegade, because Renegade, like, I don't know what happened with Cloud9 with that whole turmoil thing I have. I'm not going to put fingers or anything, but he made that decision, like, I'm going to team with Frosty on Sentinels, and it didn't work out. Like, it just didn't work out, didn't go to plan, which I guess you kind of have to expect, wasn't really thought out, like, I guess two through at the end. But now I think he kind of just found himself on the FaZe roster. It's like a second choice. He surrounded himself with Falcated. We have Snipedown, who's still here, who's new and revitalized. He's actually taking the game a lot more serious than before, so that's great to see. And we have Spartan, who's been hanging out in limbo after the whole EU crisis, which I still kind of question if Spartan will end up in this roster somehow. We did see that kind of boo-boo-doo-boo drop and him going to G1, which he's been doing super well there. But right now, this FaZe roster, for me, this is Renegade's time to prove that he is the player that he is regarded as so highly as being the best player in the game. He's surrounded by a very solid 3 players who has proven in the past, maybe not so recently, that they can take it to Game 5 against most of these teams. And Renegade added to this roster, it's his time to prove that he is the best player in the game. And this team is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, full of Slayers. Maybe it doesn't make sense on paper, but can they make these tools work? That's what I'm wondering. And I've always been a FaZe fan since the very beginning of this game. I'm still a FaZe fan. I think Renegade's a great player. So I'm going to be rooting for this team, but I do think it's very, very interesting. This is the most interesting team, I think, to really watch coming into this next event.
Aldo, your thoughts on this roster?
I think FaZe lost their best player and didn't replace it with a better player. Yeah, Boo-Boo-Doo-Boo, like, I had this hot take on Reddit, and Reddit definitely tried to shut me down for saying this, but Boo-Boo-Doo-Boo was the best player on FaZe, and anybody that's looking at FaZe will be like, no, it was Falcated, or no, it was Bound. You're just looking at their gun skill. There's more to Halo than that. You don't win Halo games just off gun skill. And that's the same thing I criticize Renegade for all this time. He does all these flashy plays, but he's giving up space in the process of doing it. He's costing his team objectives. He's costing his team points and positioning and everything that actually matters in winning a Halo game when he's doing those. And everyone's like, oh, well, Falcated was the best player on FaZe. He does the same thing. He ego challenges, he dies at inopportune moments, and his team suffers because of it. And it leaves players like Boo Boo and Snipebound out to dry because they're trying to make the right play. Now they're the last alive. It's easy to collapse on them. Like, there's nothing they can do at that point. They're getting collapsed on because you didn't have patience. And I think Spartan and Renegade are huge upgrades, like, overall on the mechanical skill portion compared to a Boo Boo plus Bound combo, but I don't think it's enough to make up for the fact that this team doesn't play in a way that consistently wins games. I think their ceiling is now just a little bit higher, but they still don't have tools to help them reach that ceiling. Like, they didn't grab a ladder or a staircase or anything and wheel it up to try to change that light bulb on the ceiling for an idea on how to play Halo. They just grabbed a fucking pole and raised the roof a little bit.
No, I totally feel that, though, and that's kind of the vibe I get as well. Like, for FaZe, it doesn't seem like they were out there, like, actively trying to make these changes. Like, they weren't proactive. They just took advantage of the situation that unfolded before them. Like, we knew that FaZe needed to make a change, right? Like, they've been performing really poorly in these past events. A 1-for-1 Bound for Renegade, like, I think that would have, and I think you just touched on this too, oddly, like, I think that would have kept C9 the same and then improved FaZe a little bit. If they had Boo Boo.
I'd also like to note, just for a moment, the only reason that Renegade was available for this FaZe roster is because Bound went to Cloud9. And FaZe still had to shell out to
That's
get
right.
Renegade.
That's
So
right.
this was not a one-on-one, bound for Renegade swap. This
Right.
was
Right, 'cause,
Renegade was
again-
very, very sought after on this.
Dude,
yeah, and like
would've been
again,
crazy,
they're like
man.
unintentionally. Go ahead.
Optic Renegade if he somehow ended up there, but didn't happen. I thought there was a chance,
who-
like in that whole
Who
limbo
would you
phase.
have like swapped? Like at that point, you have the Lucid Trippy duo, the APG Formal duo.
Honestly,
like,
at this point,
Trippy.
probably Trippy or Formal. I think for Renegade,
wow.
just for in terms of roles. I'm not like a expert when it comes to team composition though, but I think Optic,
Mhm.
we could kind of get to them maybe now. I don't know if we're kind of done with phase, but
Oh
Optic,
yeah.
Optic in my eyes are kind of like they're kind of just hanging out. They're the only team that hasn't really just like switched at all, and I almost I don't really feel bad, but like I feel like I want to believe in Optic, man, but I just cannot. It's tough. Even though they look so great online before Kansas City, they just won the last very last pro series we've ever had. But I still question these players when it comes to LAN. Like, can they pull it off in the end?
Mhm.
So, and I really want, Lucid and Trippy to get their first win. Lucid is such a great just face for the new game that came out. Really awesome player to watch. Insane talent, insane skill. APG knows how to win. Formal just came back. What a great story of him coming back to win a championship in Halo. But man, dude, I just don't know like if they can actually do it, especially with how really like this phase roster, I think, kind of got upgraded. Cloud9 kind of remaining the same, and Sentinels, they're Sentinels. I know Lethal, he kind of got dropped and re-picked up. There's a little bit weird stuff there, but I don't think it's deep. I think they're pretty much going to be the same. And Optic, they're kind of hanging out. I think right now they're like top 4, honestly.
But
It's hard
is
to
it
say.
interesting that you're saying that, but they've been doing so well with these online
Yeah.
events? What are your takeaways there? Even with these
It's
online
online.
performances, you still see them.
They did they got second at the last, no, they got third. They got third at the last event. And I think for now, you can only call them top 3 right now, even though they're getting like these first place finishes until they prove it against Cloud9 and Sentinels on LAN now. Sentinels is a whole different issue now for them. It used to be just Cloud9, but now Sentinels, now they have Renegade and FaZe, who I always felt that Lucid had a problem playing against, and now he's on a different team who's really competitive with them. It's tough, man. It's really tough for this team. I'm curious of what
At the
Audley
same
thinks about this,
time,
though.
yeah, and Audley, I just want to touch on one thing. Like I do feel like it is worth noting, and I want you to address this a little bit, Audley, that like Renegade had a certain level of familiarity and like chemistry with the team he just left. Like he played with them for a long time. He's very experienced with these players. Like he is now teaming with players that he didn't team with before. He's going to have to learn and adapt to these new play styles. I don't think it's going to be as easy for him as it was with this past team. And now I'll pass the mic to you, Audley, for your thoughts there.
So, am I giving thoughts on Renegade or on Optic here?
Optic. Yeah. Or
Okay,
just whatever you want.
I think Optic is still top 3 team, and they've still got the same issue that they had that both Sentinels and Cloud9 exposed. You've got Formal, who's like, even though he's acknowledged that he was over aggressively pushing and just kind of leaving himself out to dry, that's his play style. It's very hard to just break that without specifically working toward it. And again, the more they win tournaments and stuff, the more they're going to just stay the same. The more they do well in scrims, the less they're going to improve. I think if they start playing worse online, that's a better look for them for LAN. On the subject of Renegade going into new players, I think he's only won tournaments with 2 different rosters. Well, I guess technically 3. There are 2 different splices, because there was Boo Boo, Shooter, Shotzi, and Renegade, which was a great roster, and then Eco and Stellar, Shotzi, and Renegade. So like the splice rosters, it's Shotzi, Renegade plus a player that was really intelligent and a player that was just really individually skilled, like Boo Boo, Eco, and then Stellar, Shooter.
Nice.
And now he's again one with Eco Stellar, and then another very talented player who's actually changed his playstyle completely from Halo 5, where he's more like this selfless player, Penguin. But I think moving into the team that he is now with FaZe, where it's Falcated and Spartan and Snipedown, like Snipedown makes intelligent plays and doesn't really like expose himself a lot, but none of those players on that roster are making those game-changing plays and decisions that don't show up on a stat screen or don't show up in a highlight reel. Like when I watched, again, and going back to Boo Boo Doo Boo, because I keep talking about how he was the best player on FaZe, I was rewatching one of their games after Kansas City, and he just made this play with Camo where I said, Boo Boo Doo Boo might be the best player in the game. Like the stuff he pulled off with this one camo spanned the entire map of Recharge, and he got like 5 kills with it and completely turned around the game in favor of FaZe. And it was just next level thinking that set up play to work the way it did. And like when I was streaming that, I was like, Boo Boo Doo Boo is just a god. It's as simple as that. And he won't have a player making those kinds of clutch decisions because the team he's on now is a bunch of, I'm going to put this as bluntly as possible. They are Unga Bunga Halo players.
That's right.
So should we
and they're gonna be really good at Unga Bunga Halo. Like they move forward.
I'm interested, man.
People, but it's going
I'm interested to see how they.
It's going to be like what KC would play like without Druck.
Let's touch on that team. Let's touch on that team. You're talking about, of course, G1, Gamers First, Boo Boo, Devin, Squall Eye, Swish.
I
think
Swish.
A little typo.
You did not
type out there. My bad.
So disappointed.
Unacceptable.
Sorry, I did not mean to disrespect you so hard. There you go. Let's talk about this team. Like you said, Unga Bunga. You want to talk about that? Go into depth a little bit more on what you mean about how they.
Oh no, I was talking about FaZe Unga Bunga Halo. Now.
Yeah,
FaZe first.
We could talk about them too. I mean, you could bring it back, like.
But
let's do that.
We'll bring it back. We can definitely transition into Gamers First, since I keep talking about Boo Boo Doo Boo. Boo Boo and Swish are both fantastic talents. Devin is going to be the type of player that's going to blend into the background on that roster. That's the type of player he's always been. Like, he's got decent gun skill, but he fills the same kind of roles as a Chig or a Victory X, or in today's era, Envor or Tusk, where you're not going to see them really frequently show up on a stat screen or in a highlight reel. But just like Lethal, they're in useful positions on the map. They're making sure the team's positioning isn't falling apart, and they're just there to lay down cover fire, basically. I don't really know much about Squall Eye, even from watching what little I've caught of his POV from tournament play.
Yeah.
He's pretty skilled. He wins a lot of gun battles, but I haven't really seen anything about him that stands out so much. But with Boo Boo making intelligent decisions, and Swish's like complete gun skill and his comms, like Swish is a complete player right now. For him to come out of nowhere,
he's dope
in Halo. He's really good. He's absolutely the real deal. And you've seen how far Oxygen have fallen without him until just now.
Right. Let's also talk about still in this FaZe sphere. You know, FaZe has Spartan, and he's leaving a hole in EU. So let's talk about this rumored EU squad. I know it's been confirmed. I don't even know. It's been confirmed that Manny has joined the squad, but their fourth is still a mystery. Who do we think that's going to be?
I actually don't have a clue.
You don't have a clue. I thought Soul Snipe, just based on the rumored KCP roster, looks like Soul Snipe is not going to be there. So maybe they're doing like a 2-player swap. That's the only player I could think of. Like there could be like again, it's a mystery. We don't know. But my bet would be Soul Snipe, just for that duo type of ship right there. And looking at T-Man, like, what's up?
I was just gonna say that the only change that has been confirmed, we know that Spartan and King Nick are off, and that they've taken in Manny. So you're right. Like someone like Soul Snipe would be,
Ooh,
it would
Pistola.
make
What if
sense.
Pistola comes back?
Technically, Spartan is not off of United yet, like officially speaking. He's still
Right,
officially
he's benched.
speaking benched.
He's still on the bench.
It
Yes.
could be Spartan. If Phase doesn't work out, Spartan could very well be in that last spot. Looking at this roster, I'm rooting for Manny. I was a big Manny fan coming into this. I don't know how this is really going to work out, especially since it seems like every other roster is kind of blowing them out of the water at the moment. And this is like a Manny for King Nick, right? At the moment. So I think like it's a kind of somewhat lateral trade, I would say. I'm still rooting for Manny. Let's see, Ryan Noob and Rain. I think they're both very good at this game. And it's tough. It's not a full team right now, so I can't really like picture like how they're gonna compare. But I am rooting for Manny to find his success. It's just such a hard road ahead, man. Like they haven't been able to touch Optic this past EU roster, which is still very solid. And yeah, they got to refigure out everything from scratch too.
Yeah, and I know, and you've kind of touched on this in the past, oddly, like Ryanoob, Rain, they play this game a certain way. The teammates that they, join, like the players that join these two are going to have to either be willing to play that way, have already played that way, or like completely change that play style. How do you think Manny fits into that play pattern of Ryanoob and Rain and the rest of you?
I'm actually shocked E United would pick up anybody from KCP, and like I think that's a huge mistake if they're trying to bring in players from the most unga bunga aggressive roster in Halo currently to play with Ryanoob and Rain, who are so like Tar Heel, dead set, not moving around on the map unless you have all your numbers. Like it's so weird that they would look at KCP as their roster to move around with. It just doesn't really make sense to me, and it looks like they're doubling down on the stress factor of a team that's history is not built to help each other out. I don't think this is a roster that makes sense for them at all.
I don't know if they had many options, probably.
I mean, probably not, especially not trying to offload both Nick and Spartan to build around what Ryanoob wants. But I think Ryanoob not going for more passive players to bring in is a mistake. I still think Tylenol would be the best option for a fourth for them, but of course he's locked in on SSG at this point.
Holding on there, man. He's on there for the rest of the year.
So let's move on. Let's talk about KCP and what they're rumored to be. It's looking like their new unofficial lineup is going to be Druck, Talik, Collect, and King Nick. This roster seems solid. Oddly, let's open with you. What are your thoughts?
Have they played all together yet?
Not in a tournament. They've scrimmed a bit, I believe. My thoughts on
I think they've just been scrimming together.
I think low-key Druck is the smartest not eco player in the game, other than like maybe Frosty Snakebite. Talik is incredibly skilled, always goes off with power weapons. I think Nick is just kind of a side grade from what they already had. But Collect is absolutely the real deal. He's a young up-and-coming talent. His gun skill is insane, and I base that not off any of his 4v4 competitive Halo play. I tuned into his stream like the one day he has streamed ever. He was playing Fiesta, and every single weapon he swapped to, he just didn't miss with. He was like not even trying, awesome. Not really paying attention to his screen, and just not missing. Kid's incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah, Collect is so great, man. He splashed into the scene, and it was a big splash, man. Like he is such a talented player, and I'm really wishing him luck. It's just like it's not a confirmed roster. I really hope it just comes to fruition for Collect, because he's been kind of hanging out, like swapping different rosters here and there. Space Station was like that first kind of like glimpse of like, oh, this is like an official roster for me to like do my work in. But KCP is a big step up, and the question is, can they break that top 6 curse? Because they've been at top 6 every single event. And I thought that
Actually,
team, honestly, was going to stick together for all events. I thought they were going to stick together until Worlds just because I felt like they had like a brotherhood thing kind of going. But they made a switch, man. They made a switch of most teams. Um, and yeah, Collect again. I'm really rooting for him to do well here.
I'm actually looking at some of their scrim results, and they've had some promising scrims with Collect. They haven't won any of the scrims with him on the roster, but they're actually getting destroyed by Complexity right now. Like, wow, this is going on. But
what
Optic,
is Cole right
G1,
now?
and Sentinels. Complexity,
Cole's
it's Vetra, Monster, and then Cycle and Neuronical from the Incognito LG roster.
LG, yeah.
So that means no more Hysteria on that roster?
No more Hysteria.
Has he, and you mentioned this in our notes, has he just retired, or will we see more Hysteria?
Don't know. I don't think he played this past weekend, so he may just be gone because he's known for an attitude. So if he's not on a roster of people who are going to carry him, then he's kind of a liability.
I've got I don't have graphics for the rest of these teams, but I've got a few more rosters to call out.
Sure.
Fnatic, Super CC, Jazero, Septify, Rami. No more Envor.
They officially announced Rami today or yesterday.
Right. Yeah, it just happened.
So what are y'all's thoughts really quickly on that change, minus Envor plus Rami?
I think it's a slight downgrade. I mean, Envor was so solid in that roster. He really stepped up big time, I think, especially. All four of those players, I think, all stepped up. Same with like the KCP guys from Halo 5. You saw them kind of climbing up. And this is like their big moment. Like they finally are playing super well. Fnatic's always been kind of hanging out top 12. No matter how well they play, they just cannot clutch. And Envor, I think, was like that guy who like made just stuff happen. And Rami, great player. I think it's a downgrade right now, man. I haven't seen them play too much, but I would be skeptical if they did anything better than they already have done.
And then I also want to touch on Oxygen, who is now Common, Triton, Nemesis, and Bomex. Aldi, what are your thoughts on that team?
I think that's a pretty good core. Common will probably benefit from having Nemesis and Bone because their communications are really good. One thing I've noticed about Common is his gameplay is incredible when his team is small talking. If they're just calling out, he kind of just derps around and makes mistakes. But when his team is actually small talking and making plans together, his gameplay is crisp. Triton, just very aggressive in-your-face player. He's like a young Spartan play style. Nemesis and Bomax fill up that team. So it's a good core chemistry. I don't expect them to like be a top 8 roster or anything, but they will consistently be in the top 16. They could break into top 8 periodically, but I don't think they're going to be like this force to be reckoned with. I think they'll be about where BBG was.
All right, BBG.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that covers all of most of the rumored rosters that we had. Obviously, as these teams, like most of these are unconfirmed, so we'll see what actually like sticks and which teams actually form before this next regional. Moving on, we're going to wrap the show up here in a little bit, but one more topic we kind of wanted to talk about was this HCS partnership program. As you know, the partnership program, I guess it was like open to applications, and a lot of these smaller orgs were applying to become partners. It has come out like, we don't know who all made it, but we know some teams that didn't make it. One of them being BBG, who did announce that they released their roster. I think another org that confirmed did not become a partner was XSET.
KCP, XSET, G1, Vexed in Europe. Not sure why they even thought they had a chance. Status Quo didn't make it.
Status Quo didn't make it, right? So what are y'all's thoughts on that? Who do y'all think will make it? Like, who does that leave, really? Like, Complexity?
Well, before I spoke to Audley, which he'll say what he has to say, I thought logical choice would be Ascend, Quadrant at least, because they've been very strong not only in their own scene, they have really reputable names, but also they are doing stuff in A as well. Like they already proved that at Kansas City. I think they're really two safe picks. And perhaps you could see like Knights. I think Knights is also a good choice. You kind of need to wonder like why KCP wasn't in there. I think a lot of it, like Oddly mentioned to us, is because they have that kind of crypto backing. Um, so I think looking at it, Ascend and Quadrant are definitely what I would think would be the teams would be picked up, given that KCP teams like that are not being picked up. But I know, Oddly, you maybe have some insights. I don't know if this is true or not, but like you have something that you might know. I don't know if we
Stuff
should
that
grab
I'm
it.
speculating on,
Okay.
just based off like who's not said, oh, well, we didn't get in. Like Complexity and Oxygen have both been in Halo Infinite since the beginning. So I think both of them are going to be in the partnership program because Complexity, they're backed by the guy that owns the Cowboys, or like backed by someone who owns the Cowboys, not necessarily
Right.
the Dallas Cowboys owner. Oxygen, I think, is tied big into traditional sports in Boston. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I know they're like a big traditional sports esports organization. I
They got the green.
think,
Irish.
yeah, they own Boston Breach as well, which I think is
Oh,
the
wow.
Call
Oh,
of Duty team.
okay.
Yeah, that's a common thing.
Yeah, that's
So,
a CDL.
So
Cool.
they definitely have proven track record that people probably won't realize because they're like, oh, Oxygen sucks at Halo Infinite. They've never gotten like a really good placing. Who the fuck are these guys? Why would they get signed when you have KCP finishing top 6 frequently? But I think KCP's finances are almost entirely backed by cryptocurrency. And I think that 343 is probably looking for stability long term, and you get that more from somebody who's got money coming in from fucking NFL teams
Stable
rather
money.
than rather
Which
than
sucks.
what's currently experiencing a crash, and like how long
Yeah.
can they stay afloat if it continues to trend downward.
I think you did hit the nail on the
But
head. Like I do think they're looking for stable teams with stable financial backgrounds, and that's why we're seeing, like you said, not saying this is for sure, but like Oxygen and Complexity haven't outwardly said we didn't make it, whereas like those top teams like KCP have been like, wow, we're kind of mad that we didn't make it. I feel like you're about to say one more thing before I cut you off.
I was going to bring up Luminosity, who signed the Incognito roster out of nowhere, had this big announcement video. They've not been speaking at all since Incognito kind of flopped at the tournament where they were signed, and I don't think they kept their team at all. Like I think dropped the team right after Kansas City. So I actually don't think Luminosity are going to be a partner team either. I've heard I've heard rumors, and the top comment on Reddit also puts this one forward. But as soon as 343 talked about expanding the partnership program, Nadeshot was like, "Hey, it's your boy."
That was recently.
He
tweeted
that was a minute ago.
That was a while
back.
Like when they first announced it, like, oh hey, we're going to be expanding the partnership program. He was like, you guys should talk to me. I run 100 Thieves. I'm a big console shooter guy.
Different days though. Like, different days.
I really hope that doesn't come to be the case. Like, it's definitely a big fan-backed choice, and they got the best merch. Got admit, they are the best t-shirt org. But I don't want to see that happen because they haven't done anything in this scene yet, like at all. Sure. So like, why would they be the choice?
I completely agree with you. Like, as you know, if you familiar with the competitive FPS scene, Halo, COD, you know who Nadeshot is. You're probably a Nadeshot fan, but it does.
There's even a medal in this game for him.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Literally, like It
That's
would
funny.
feel cheap though to see someone who like didn't invest any time or effort in Halo for like the first year, or however long, win over an org like KCP or some of these other orgs that have just been a part of Halo even since Halo 5 and still just haven't gotten that recognition that
That sucks,
they
man.
deserve.
They've
Yeah,
That's right. They've been here since Halo 5. Damn.
yeah,
Yeah, that
but
hurts.
Of course, there's a
anyway,
dark
I
horse
think.
option out there that we haven't talked about yet.
What is
The
it? I don't
real
Oh, who
know.
would that
horse.
be?
The old Team Liquid horse.
Team
Oh,
Liquid.
man.
Oh my god. That would be out of
It-
nowhere.
Coming back.
I can say almost with 100% certainty that's not happening, but I had to throw out
Not
Team
happening.
Liquid because they had the best skins in Halo 5, and it was not
Right?
even close.
That's right.
Yeah.
How could I have forgotten?
Their look was really clean. I think that's all we have for now for the HCS Bracket Show, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're watching on Twitch, make sure to follow and watch this VOD. Check it out. Thank you guys so much again, Devious, Oddly, for joining. I know
Let's do
it's
this
like
more.
tough right now. Yeah, it's tough right now because there's not a lot to talk about because Halo's so slow. But we're gonna try to keep it up. We're gonna try to keep y'all entertained, and I guess we'll see y'all next time. Thank you again for joining us, and we're out. Peace out.